So let's take a look at Harvard sociologist Christina Cross. She is an author, and she talked about the role of economics in this topic.
It is true that when Black children grow up with both parents, they tend to experience advantages, and they do tend to have improved outcomes. It is also true, unfortunately, that they still lag behind their white peers in the same family structure. And my findings indicate that much of that has to do with these wide gaps in economic resources. And so if we really want to turn the tide, we need to be thinking about how to bolster family resources instead of making cuts to key social safety net programs like Medicaid and SNAP and Children's Health Insurance Program. We could be thinking about ways to help families to stay afloat during these challenging times by increasing that amount of aid.
What do you think?
I'm familiar with Dr. Cross and her work. I completely disagree with it in terms of the emphasis on the gaps between children in different family structures, the interracial gaps between different family structures. I'll put it plainly. There's nothing that any sociologist or economist can do to make a Black family white or a Black child white. But there are things that our institutions can do to encourage marriage. So whether Black children, and I don't even know sort of all of the research she's citing, but I'll grant that everything she says is correct. Whether a Black child grows up with two married parents, to me, is separate from whether they have the same exact outcomes as their white peers. I'm not comparing Black families to white families. I'm comparing Black families to what they could be in terms of their full potential. The other thing I'll say is this: the notion that you help the family by giving more government aid and more government programs, and this is typically, she didn't say it this way, but this is typically an argument about doing more for single moms and their children, is part of how we got into this problem in the first place. Starting in the 19th...
I believe they became dependent on it and said, I don't need a man anyway.
Correct. And the two key cultural shocks that happened in the 1960s, each one affected both, each member of the household. The expansion of government welfare displaced men from their rightful role as providing for their families. And then the rise of second wave feminism convinced women that marriage was oppressive, the home was a prison, and that men were toxic. So what you have is a dislocation of both parties, right? Because any change in large sort of family outcomes is going to deal with one of three elements: a man, a woman, or the institution of marriage. And in the 1960s, you had the rise of two, as I said, cultural shocks that disrupted the balance in the household. And part of it has been that idea that if we just take care of women and their children, then the entire family will do better. And obviously, we've seen that hasn't been the case.